in the mail MSX games from Japan, collecting without fail those shoot 'em ups, and that's the plan. He doesn't just collect them, he also codes them too. Join us and we'll go on electric adventures with you.
Hey troopers, Electric Adventures here, and happy 40th MSX anniversary. Now I'm recording that, I'm 2 days late, on the 27th of June 1983. The actual MSX standard was ratified. No actual machines or hardware was available at that time. If you want to know an amazing coincidence, the Spectravideo machines, the original Spectravideo machines that were that MSX was basically based on, with some very slight changes, was also released, but in physical form, at the CES in June in 1983 as well. So it's yes, a bit of a coincidence and everything like that, and then Spectravideo had to do a fast turnaround and release an actual MSX compatible machine later on, which caused all sorts of confusion. But this is not a history lesson, this is about celebrating the 40th anniversary of MSX, and I thought and I'm going to be doing a few of these videos over the next month. And we'll be doing some gameplays and playing some of my favourite games, and I thought I'd start by giving you a look at my first perceptions of MSX through the games that were available on release here in Australia. Now here in Australia we got the Spectravideo 728 as one of the launch models, the Sony Hitbit, I'll try and put some pictures up here, and the Yamaha CX5, which is actually just behind there. That is the slightly later model with the 64K memory instead of 32K memory. And they were the three main machines. A little bit later we got a model from Sanyo with a inbuilt tape deck. I did see on the mainland Australia, so I'm from Tasmania, which is a little island below Australia. On mainland Australia I did see some Casio machines, and I believe some Toshiba machines, but that was it. And there really wasn't a lot of software. So the first software that I encountered, and which I was very excited for at the time, being able to play games that were available on the Spectrum, because all the magazines and things I was seeing, I was so excited about the Spectrum, but it was very hard to buy a Spectrum where I lived, because obviously they were a UK machine, they were being imported, and they still ended up being reasonably expensive. So I did play them in the stores, but missed out of them, and missed out on playing those games, except for the ones in the store. So I was very excited to get some games that were out on those systems. So one of the first games that I played was Blagger by Alligator. Alligator supported the MSX reasonably well. They're very much games that ran on Spectrum hardware, and they have converted them across, but they haven't completely lazy ported them, they do actually use some part of the MSX hardware in the thing. And Blagger was like another game that I wanted to play on the MSX, which is Manic Miner and Jet Set Willy. No, I had to pick 10 games, so I had to eliminate those. So Blagger represents that genre of games from the UK, and fun in its own right. Manic Miner has a really good version on the MSX, and so does Jet Set Willy. And I actually played both of those, but we didn't quite have those at launch, whereas this one was available just about from day one. And this is actually my copy from back in the day. So I sort of started with some of my original games. Now, at launch as well, we did have some cartridges from Konami. They were incredibly expensive, and one of the only ones from back in the day that I ended up with was Antarctic Adventure. And I still only have this loose copy. This is one Konami title I have not found a box for. There's plenty of copies of the sequel game to this around, but it's actually hard to find European style. There have been a few in the orange box. Antarctic Adventures. If anybody happens to have a loose box of Antarctic Adventure, I have a cartridge that needs a box. Now this game really shows off what the MSX can do, and I said from a launch title it's pretty amazing. It's really colourful. The games from Konami had lots of polish. They have intermissions, they have lots of animation. They really use lots and lots of colour, movement and fun gameplay really well. And probably, as I said, in the next couple of weeks I'll be replaying some of my favourites. You'll be guaranteed that I'll be doing a game session and playing this one. So Antarctic Adventure, one of my absolute favourites, and it's not a shoot 'em up, it is just a try and get to the next goal in as fast time possible while avoiding the obstacles, and it really is a great early MSX game. So we'll flip back to the UK based games. So Gremlin Graphics also supported the MSX, and they actually wrote a tool to emulate the Spectrum and port games across, and then I'm sure a lot of other developers used very similar code to do that. Now that did produce some, let's face it, some really awful games. So it really depends on how good the original game is, and the fact that the MSX is trying to emulate a Spectrum that can actually slow it down sometimes, and depending how they do. But this actual game that I'm holding in my hands is actually quite well done and a fun game in its own right. And I used to love Gauntlet and those style of games, and it is a little bit like that, where it's an overhead adventure game with ninjas called Way of the Tiger 2 Avenger. And this is my copy from back in the day. And this one actually had an interesting story. I must have somehow, at some stage, I reckon I sold this copy with my 728 when I sold it on to another person. And then I bought this same copy back from a second-hand store that was down here, and I know it was my copy by the sticker and a sticker that was on the front. So, which I have sadly removed. Yeah, it's actually a good fun game. I would have loved playing this on the Spectrum as well. It does nothing special on the MSX. It uses the MSX hardware, but original game was a good game, and that makes it a good game on the MSX, and it brings back lots of memories. And we'll go to another title, which is also just a straight Spectrum port, but it's a game that is really good fun. Myself and my friend, local friend, played this game on our own systems together, and marked our progress. Used to watch the TV series that this is based on, so very familiar with the characters, but it's a very simple game and does not take advantage of the hardware whatsoever, but it's good fun, and it's called Minder. And not only do I have my copy of Minder, I actually have my friend's copy of Minder as well. This game has lots of nostalgia value. Fortunately there's no screenshots on there, but it's really basic graphics. You can just imagine that definitely see that it's a Spectrum conversion type game. But it's actually good fun. It's a resource management and task orientated game. We have to go around and do various things and not get nicked. It was fun. I played this for hours and hours and hours back in the day. Alright, now another title. So Sony, so the Konami game that I showed, the Antarctic Adventure, that would have had to have been imported by my boss into Australia himself from overseas, but Sony actually released titles and physical media with their systems. Now, at the time, I would have been going to a college and using the Apple II, and two games on that were on the Apple II were some of my first early favourite games, and one of them is Shoplifter. Sony brought out a cartridge version of Shoplifter in Australia for the MSX, and it's a really good version. And they came in these square boxes. Right? We didn't see anything else other than the square boxes here in Australia. There are later Sony titles and earlier ones as well that are in large boxes. And they come in these slip cases, and they have these actually fairly boring and very consistent grey cartridges with with a common label in the same colour format, which is basically just the title of the game there. Shoplifter is a very, very good playable version. I could probably just do a top 10 Sony, because the Sony titles are very, very good, but I'm trying to represent a few different ones here. So Shoplifter, and I said I still actually quite enjoy playing that version. So staying with Sony, the other game that I used to play on the Apple II that I absolutely loved, and I was blown away that there was a copy for the MSX, is Lode Runner. And the MSX version is very good. It's actually quite quick. There is a Lode Runner, this one, a Lode Runner 2, which is the other 50 courses of the original 100 courses. There's a Lode Runner Championship Edition, and there's a Lode Runner on disc, which I have a physical, shall we say, copy from back in the day, but I haven't actually found a real copy since then. The disc version actually has all 100 levels from Lode Runner 1 and Lode Runner 2, and an editor. And it's that editor on that disc version that led to the levels that are in the Championship Edition, which are ones that, you know, people out in the community made and sent in. But Lode Runner is a great strategy platform game. You can get hours and hours of entertainment. I played Lode Runner to death, and I have actually finished 1 and 2. I don't think I've finished all the championship ones because they are very, very hard, but really, really, really good game. Love that game. Alright, we're going to go back to tape, and once again I'm running out of numbers, so I had to I could only pick one for this reign. Activision supported most 8-bit systems really well, and they ported their games and took advantage of the hardware on each system. So I had to pick one Activision title. I could have easily picked Hero, but probably my favourite is River Raid. The version on the Coleco is, the MSX is identical to the Coleco, except the sound is a little better on the MSX. Having a different sound chip, it can do slightly deeper, boomy type sound, so the explosions are a little bit better. Runs quite fast. There is also a cartridge version that was released in Japan. I also have a copy of that, but this is the tape version from back in the day, which would be one of my original ones. On the Atari 2600, River Raid is also one of my favourite games, and it's good comparing this version to that one. The MSX and thus the Coleco version, which is nearly identical, add additional enemies, and it's quite colourful and smoothly scrolls. So back in the day, there was none of, it was possible to make the MSX smoothly scroll in the right hands. Right, next, so I'm going to end off with another 3 Konami titles, because I have to, because Konami was so well supported, and these ones were available on launch back in the day. We'll do this one next because it's a shoot 'em up, and I love shoot 'em ups. And this one, it's not the best shoot 'em up in the world, but I enjoyed it, and it did inspire me in the shoot 'em up that I wrote, Pixidis. My ship in Pixidis is very similar to the ship in this one, and this is where the inspiration was from. So it's none other than Sky Jaguar. So it's a vertically scrolling shoot 'em up. It doesn't smooth scroll, it has fairly chunky scrolling. You get used to it when you play it. It has lots of different enemy variety and level variety. It has intermission scenes and just that thing where the game evolves. It is a very simple shoot 'em up, but there's more to it than you think as you play it through. So it has, it continues to evolve, and you do get some power-ups and things like that. But it's not like a bullet hell shooter or anything like that. It's a bit too early in the genre, but it represented shoot 'em ups very well for me, and the professional quality of Konami games for the MSX. Now also another one, and I probably should have shown this one a little earlier, and as I said, these are in no particular order. So this one is particularly important, and one of the reasons why I love the MSX was this was the game that had just arrived in the arcades, and everybody was going crazy over it. It's none other than the joystick breaking Track and Field. And the games are very, very well done, the events. So unfortunately, and they, MSX cartridges can actually hold a bit, but obviously to keep the costs down, they split the events between 2 cartridges, so you can't actually play the full 8 things in the one game, in one score, but it's okay. For each of the titles, Track and Field 1 and Track and Field 2, so Track and Field 1 we got first, and Track and Field 2 we got a bit later. I don't remember the Australian packaging looking like this. my memory is a bit fuzzy. I also have some of the, this is released as Hyper Olympics 1 and 2 as well. And there's also Sony versions as well, just to confuse things. But you have the 100 metre dash, the long jump, the hammer throw, and the 400 metre dash on this one. And then you've got the other 4 events on number 2. But they're just, once again, really well done. It's got all the little, all of the animations, lots of colour and intermission things, and even, you know, really good sound and music and everything like that. It just showed the professional way that Konami were able to get the most out of the MSX. So I had to cut this down to 10. So last and not least, and this is technically another shoot 'em up, and it really is one of my absolute favourite games for MSX1. And I do regularly play this. I even have a little Abidic handheld, and if I'm sitting there somewhere, I'll probably have a game of this, or one of the others that I had to sadly eliminate because I could only pick 10, and it's none other than Nightmare. Now this is a Japanese copy. I didn't have a copy of this for a very long time until I found this copy, and I had a loose copy for a while. This is my upgraded version. So it is in itself a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up, but you are a knight. You're not flying, you're walking on the ground, so you need to cross bridges. You can shoot various enemies, and if you shoot a whole pattern of enemies, you get a bonus. You shoot ground targets, which some of them can also block you, and that gives you extra power-ups and things. You have shields that fly down if you shoot those, and you can get different weapon combinations, and different weapon combinations work with different enemies and bosses, so you've actually, there's a bit of strategy and everything to it. It's a very well-rounded game. It actually has 2 sequels that are not shoot 'em ups at all. The second game in the series is a platform game that is actually very good, and then the third one, Shalom as it's called, is a more adventure type game, but a very good game. I'll try and put a little bit of game footage up here as well. But yeah, that's my 10 games that inspired me to continue and made me fall in love with MSX at the launch of the system in Australia. Please mention down below your stories of when you first saw MSX and where you saw it. I'd be very interested to know other people's experiences around the world. And join me in this month of celebrating the 40th anniversary of the start of the MSX standard. Alright, I'm Electric Adventures. Thanks to all my subscribers. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.